It started with a text. Simple, cold, surgical. You're not coming to my sister's wedding. That was it. No greeting, no context, not even a period. And then, a second message came through like a slap across the cheek. My family doesn't want you there. My fingers froze above the screen. Not because I didn't believe it. No, I believed it. I'd seen this coming for months. But even when you expect the storm, it still hits hard when it arrives. I read it again, trying to hear her voice in those words. But they weren't hers anymore. Not the woman I married. Not Vivian. For a moment, I didn't respond. I stared at the screen while the rest of the world moved on around me. Somewhere outside my office window, a leaf blower hummed. Across the room, the coffee maker clicked off. And in that silence, something shifted. A line was crossed, and I wasn't just on the other side. I was done standing still. I typed slowly, each word landing like a nail in a coffin. So you chose status over blood? Sent. No anger, no emojis, no exclamation points. Just truth. I stared at the message for a beat longer, then I opened a tab on my laptop. The wedding planning site. I knew the login by heart. I'd set it up months ago when I still thought I was part of this family, not just a transaction in dress shoes. Username. Password. Click. The venue was right there at the top of the dashboard. Booked. Confirmed. Under my name. Deposit. Paid in full. My card. My signature. My kindness. My mistake. My thumb hovered over the Manage Booking option, and I clicked it with a calm that surprised me. A small window popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this event? Yes. Absolutely. This action is irreversible. Perfect. Click. Gone. In seconds, the venue that had been their centerpiece, the grand ballroom with the chandeliers and the garden ceremony space and the hand-carved Italian chairs, was no longer theirs. They didn't know that I'd taken out wedding insurance. Why would they? I was just the guy who worked in trades or something, not someone smart enough to read the fine print. Insurance claim. Conflict with bride's family resulting in event cancellation. Upload documents. I attached screenshots of the text from Vivian. Claim approved. Just like that. $3,200 in the pipeline, flowing not into their fantasy wedding, but back to me. It wasn't about the money. It was about control. It was about being reminded that I had some left. They didn't know what I was capable of. They never asked. They never looked past my paycheck or my quiet nature or the fact that I didn't use three-syllable wine terms or wear watches that needed winding. But they were about to learn. Not in an explosion. Not with a scream. But with silence. Precision. Disassembly. They wanted me out of the picture? Fine. I'd vanish. But not before they saw what happens when the background husband decides he's done being ignored. I leaned back in my chair and watched the cancellation email hit my inbox. I imagined Clarice getting her automated update from the venue next. Maybe Graham, too, depending on whether she actually let him in on the logistics. I pictured the panic blooming across their faces, their matching expressions of disbelief. Who could have done this? Me. That's who. I walked to the kitchen, made a fresh cup of coffee, and stared out the window at the sky turning pale with the early signs of spring. There was a stillness in me now. Not emptiness, just clarity. The kind that only shows up when the smoke clears after the explosion. The kind that lets you start gathering what's left of yourself, brick by brick, and start laying new foundation. I had spent years swallowing slights, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, letting them mispronounce my job title, reduce my worth to what I could cover with a card swipe. But I wasn't built to stay invisible forever. I had allowed it. That was on me. But this moment was mine. I went back to the computer and opened the shared wedding folder. Designs, spreadsheets, guest lists, budget trackers, vendor contacts, it was all there. My work, my time, my patience. I started deleting, one file at a time. One polite betrayal erased with a keystroke. Forest deposit? Gone. Reception slideshow with childhood photos I'd painstakingly scanned? Gone. Seating chart? Gone. All that remained was a single PDF I renamed Ask Graham to Fix This. It held nothing but a blank page and a signature line. I dropped it into the shared folder, right next to where the rehearsal dinner schedule used to be. Then I closed the tab. That was the moment the match hit the gasoline. And I didn't blink. 6 months earlier, I still believed I had a seat at the table. Not just figuratively, but an actual chair where my presence was acknowledged, where my voice carried weight. That illusion didn't shatter all at once. It eroded like coastal rock, Small pieces chipped away until one day there was nothing left but silence and salt. It started with the engagement announcement. Clarice, Vivian's sister, flashed her ring at the family dinner like a victorious gladiator, and the whole room erupted. I smiled, raised a glass, even toasted to their love. Graham sat beside her, a smirk stitched onto his face like it had been there since birth. He wasn't just a groom-to-be, he was a pedigree. Wealthy, polished, and condescending in that gentle way that made you question if you'd imagine the insult. From the very beginning, I was treated like a blemish on their polished reputation. The kind of man they tolerated in photos because cropping would have looked suspicious. The whispers weren't even well hidden. He's not really her type, is he? Didn't she go to Columbia? What does he do again? At one brunch, Clarice's voice dripped sugar as she introduced me to a group of her friends. This is my sister's husband. He works in trades or something. I remember the way her fingers fluttered, like she was swatting a fly. I stood there, smiling through the burn in my throat, and simply said, electrical and systems integration. Mostly commercial structures. Her friends blinked. I excused myself. Vivian defended them. Every time. They're just old-fashioned, she'd say, resting her head on my shoulder like that was supposed to make it better. Old-fashioned. That was the excuse. Like that explained away the disinterest, the coldness, the subtle digs. Like Clarice forgetting to include me on a group dinner invite, then laughing when I showed up anyway. Oh, I guess you're here. Cute. Cute. Still, I kept showing up. I told myself it was for Vivian. For love. For family. So I tried harder. I volunteered to handle logistics for the wedding because I knew none of them could read a spreadsheet without developing a migraine. I found the florist after 2 weeks of reviewing portfolios. I negotiated a 15% discount no one thanked me for. I paid the photographer's deposit when Clarice's dad's credit card accidentally declined during a brunch toast. Everyone laughed. I didn't. I was building a wedding like an architect with no name on the blueprint. I kept receipts, not because I was planning revenge, but because part of me believed there'd be a moment. A shift. A point where someone would look at all I'd done and say, hey, thank you. You matter. But that moment never came. Vivian changed during those months. Not in obvious ways, her laugh still filled the room, her hand still found mine under the table at family dinners, but there was something different in her eyes. A flicker of calculation. She started dressing like the rest of them, spoke more like Clarice. And when I asked her about it, she brushed it off. It's just for the wedding. After, things will calm down. I believed her. But there were signs. We stopped talking about our own plans. Our trips, our savings, our future. Everything became about the wedding. Not ours, hers. Theirs. Clarice's dream day. Graham's moment. The family legacy. My presence shrank with every decision. My voice thinned out like background noise. Still, I did what was asked. Kept spreadsheets. Coordinated vendors. Created a backup guest list in case of emergencies. I even booked the rehearsal dinner space when their original venue was double booked. I sent the confirmation to Vivian and never heard a word in return. Not a thank you. Not even a thumbs up emoji. One night, I overheard a call between Vivian and her mother. I didn't mean to. I was coming up the stairs, 2 mugs of tea in hand. I stopped when I heard my name. Her mother said, I just don't think he fits the aesthetic. Vivian didn't argue. She sighed and said, he means well. Like I was a lost dog or a well-worn coat. Something that was once useful but no longer matched the decor. I stood there, listening. Then I turned around, dumped the tea, and went to bed without a word. That was the night I stopped pretending. That was when I realized I wasn't a partner in this wedding. I was a placeholder. A warm body with a working credit card. But I didn't leave. I stayed. Because I wasn't finished. Not yet. I was done begging for a seat. But I wasn't done setting the table. It's a strange thing, being the first one people call when something goes wrong, but the last one they ever think to thank. Like I'm not a person, just a function. A fix-it switch. A wallet with legs. And somewhere along the way, that became the role I accepted, even more, because at least it meant I was needed. But needing someone isn't the same as valuing them. I see that clearly now. It didn't stop with the wedding. That was just the spotlight moment, the most visible stage on which they expected me to play silent benefactor. But the truth is, I'd been underwriting their lives long before there were dresses and centerpieces. When Clarice crashed her car last fall, who loaned her a replacement? Me. My truck. The same one they like to joke about as so blue-collar it's practically denim. She needed it, just for a week, she said. I didn't see it again for 3. When she returned it, the gas tank was empty and the passenger seat smelled like stale fast food. No apology. No thanks. Just, "You're a lifesaver," with that rehearsed smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Then there was Vivian's mother. Lovely woman, if you judged her only by her Instagram quotes about grace and gratitude. But when she forgot her heart medication on a family trip, guess who drove 3 hours out of his way to deliver it? Through rain and traffic, missing a work deadline in the process. I left it with the hotel concierge. She didn't even text. Later, at dinner, she mentioned how unreliable people are these days. Vivian reached for my hand under the table, squeezed it like that counted as recognition. I just nodded, already filing it under things I do that no one will remember. And then, Graham. Golden boy Graham, with his smug grin and the aura of someone who never had to work for anything that couldn't be inherited. When the crypto crash hit him harder than expected, he didn't tell anyone. Not directly. No, he let it slip during a dinner that the upgraded wedding venue might be more than anticipated. I sliding in my direction like he already knew what I'd do. And I did it. Quietly. Without discussion. I wired over $7,500 from our joint savings account and labeled the transfer under event contingency. Vivian never asked about it. Never even acknowledged the withdrawal. Maybe she thought I owed them. Maybe she thought it was my role, default support system. The silent engine behind everyone else's polished arrival. That was the thing. They didn't see me. Not really. They saw what I could offer. What I could pay for. What I could fix. I wasn't a man. I was a resource. A utility. At first, I told myself I was being too sensitive. That love meant sacrifice. That maybe, just maybe, my quiet contributions would one day be repaid with belonging. But the math never added up. And I'm not just talking dollars and cents. I mean dignity. Self-respect. The things you trade in piece by piece until you wake up and realize you've got nothing left but your receipts. So I started documenting everything. At first it was habit, left over from my work and systems integration, where records are king and clarity is survival. But soon, it became something else. Something personal. A breadcrumb trail of every time I stepped up and they stepped on me. Invoices. Email confirmations. Screenshots of group chats where I was left out but still expected to perform. I kept all of it. Not for revenge. At least not at the start. I just wanted to remember. To see the full picture when I started doubting myself again. Because that's what people like them are good at. Rewriting history. Telling you that you're overreacting, being petty, making a big deal out of nothing. Gaslight you with smiles and champagne toasts. But paper doesn't lie. Paper tells the truth, line by line. So I filed it all, digitally, privately. Labeled, sorted, time-stamped. A growing archive of all the ways I've been treated like furniture, useful, silent, and unworthy of acknowledgement. And I began to change. Not outwardly. I still attended planning meetings. Still offered rides. Still showed up on time with tools in hand, credit card ready. But inside, something was shifting. A quiet resolution forming beneath my skin like bedrock settling. I stopped expecting thanks. Stopped hoping to be seen. And the more invisible I became to them, the clearer I became to myself. I saw exactly who I was dealing with, exactly what I meant to them, and more importantly, what I no longer had to tolerate. Then the text came, the one that confirmed what my gut had been screaming for months. Vivian's flat, sterile message. Not invited. Not wanted. No discussion. Just decree. They made it official. I wasn't family. I was furniture. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not devastated. Not enraged. Just free. Because once you know your role in someone else's script, you can finally decide whether to keep playing the part or burn the whole damn set. Her message popped up out of nowhere. 3 words. No fluff. No preamble. Just, you deserve better. At first, I thought it was spam. Or worse, pity. But then I saw the name Priya. Vivian's childhood friend. Maid of honor. The only one in that curated clique who didn't talk down to me at every family event. She was sharp, observant, the kind of woman who knew how to sip champagne without ever letting her guard down. We hadn't spoken in months, not really. Just polite exchanges at engagement parties and tasting appointments. So when her message came through, I stared at it for a long moment before replying. What do you mean? No response. Not immediately. And then, a notification. Attachment. 6 images. I clicked. The first screenshot was from a group chat, the core 4. Vivian. Clarice, Graham, and Priya. I skimmed the messages once, then again. My vision didn't blur. My chest didn't cave in. What I felt was quieter, colder, like someone had finally turned on the lights in a room I hadn't realized I was trapped in. Vivian, he's not exactly wedding aesthetic. Clarice, if he shows up in that same black shirt, I'm dead. Graham, he won't. I told Viv to handle it. Vivian again. Don't worry. I told him he's not invited. Said it was my family's call. The silence after that was the loudest thing in the room. I didn't sit down. I didn't throw my phone. I just stood there, the screen glowing in my hand like a confession under interrogation lights. That was it. The confirmation. Not only had they shut me out, they'd done it gleefully. Strategically. Like I was a logistical issue to be solved. Vivian didn't hesitate. She didn't wrestle with the morality of it. She didn't even bother making up a lie. She went straight to execution. And worse, she told them it wasn't even her choice. I stared at that final message from her. Said it was my family's call. No, Viv. That was you. That was all you. I thumbed through the remaining screenshots. Priya hadn't commented in the chat. Not once. But I could see the reactions she left, silent eye rolls, the occasional question mark. Subtle, but present. Like she was watching a car crash unfold in slow motion, powerless to stop it. The last screenshot was of a private message from Clarice to Vivian. Clarice, you really think he'll just accept it? Vivian, he always does. I locked my phone and just stood there. That sentence, 5 words, had more impact than anything I'd read in years. He always does. That was how they saw me. Predictable. Weak. Obedient. Someone who kept showing up no matter how many times he was erased. I opened the phone again and typed, "Why are you sending me this?" Priya responded almost immediately. "Because I can't pretend anymore. You've done too much for them. And they're not just ungrateful, they're cruel." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't agree. Because I was already planning. It wasn't rage that gripped me. Rage is loud, messy, explosive. This was something sharper. Surgical. Like a wire had finally snapped into place in my mind, and everything made sense. The years of being sidelined. The half-smiles. The awkward silences. The decisions made without me, even when I footed the bill. They hadn't just used me. They'd underestimated me. They thought I was some docile houseplant. Good for aesthetics and stability, but nothing more. But here's the thing about people like me, we watch. We take notes. We file away every slight and every fake compliment. And we don't forget. I sat at my desk and opened a new folder on my computer. Title, Reckoning. Inside, I copied every screenshot Priya sent. Then I added the spreadsheet I kept of wedding expenses. Payments made. Vendors booked. Every line item annotated with dates, amounts, and who approved what. I opened a blank document. Started writing down a timeline. When Vivian first brought up the idea of the upgraded venue. When Graham's crypto crash happened. When Clarice's dad's card failed. When I stepped in again and again and again. Not for them to see. Not yet. But for me. I needed to see it laid bare. I needed to remind myself that this wasn't emotional. It was factual. I wasn't lashing out. I was responding with evidence. For a moment, I thought about confronting Vivian. Telling her I knew. Demanding she explain herself. Begging her to admit she got caught up in the planning and the pressure and the appearances. But then I remembered those 5 words again. He always does. Not this time. This time, I wouldn't confront. I'd prepare. They wanted me out? Good. Let's see how their perfect wedding holds up without its invisible foundation. And just like that, I stopped hoping for change. And started planning the collapse. The moment I logged into Canva, it felt like I was walking through a house I had built for someone else, a house they mocked me for living in. Every wedding detail had passed through my hands. The invitation template? Designed from scratch, down to the gold foil initials that Vivian insisted made it look high-end. The RSVP tracker? Coded to sync across devices, auto-update counts, and even nudge late responders. The seating chart? Interactive. Click, drag, optimize. I had done all of it, after hours, in silence, believing I was contributing to a family. Now I hovered over each project, my cursor a guillotine. One by one, I started deleting. The floral design mood board, gone. The menu layout with his and hers favorite cocktails, deleted. The reception slideshow I'd crafted with baby photos, proposal pictures, even a time-lapse of the engagement party from Vivian's iPhone, all erased. The system asked, "Are you sure?" Yes. This action cannot be undone. Perfect. Click. Gone. Then I opened the wedding website dashboard. RSVP portal. Hotel room block. Custom domain. All linked to my email, my accounts, my name. I took it all down, calmly, precisely, like I was undoing a magic trick no one thought I had the power to reverse. The page that once read Clarice and Graham, a celebration of love, now redirected to a blank page with a 404 error. Then came the big one. The venue. I logged into the booking portal. There it was, the venue everyone had drooled over during the tasting tour. Chandeliers, private vineyard, marble floors. Vivian's dream location. Clarice's proof that she'd leveled up from her ex who once threw a barbecue proposal in a public park. Booking under my name. My card. My contract. I clicked Cancel Reservation. It asked if I had wedding insurance. I did. A small checkbox I'd clicked months ago, back when I thought worst-case scenarios meant weather delays or sick caterers, not betrayal. I filed a claim online under Family Conflict Resulting in Cancellation. Attached Vivian's text message for documentation. Upload successful. Status. Pending. 12 hours later, the claim was approved. $3,200. Back in my account. A little piece of my dignity, refunded. Then I created a new file. Just one. It was a blank document with a single sentence typed dead center in bold. Ask Graham to fix this. I saved it as a PDF, titled it Final Contribution, and dropped it into the shared Google Drive wedding folder. The same folder Vivian, Clarice, their mother, and Graham all had access to. The same one I had once color-coded, backed up, and shared weekly updates through. No warning. No explanation. Just that one file. I hit share. Then I turned off notifications. 10 minutes later, chaos. The first text came from Clarice. What is this? Where are the files? Why is the vendor page down? I didn't reply. Then Graham, did something happen to the site? Viv thinks you accidentally deleted the drive. I didn't reply. Then Vivian called. 3 times. I watched her name light up my screen, each call coming in faster than the last. Her contact photo, the one from our trip to Vancouver, laughing under a pine tree, felt like a cruel reminder of how far we'd fallen. I didn't answer. The phone buzzed against the table like it was shivering. Then came her message. Please pick up. We need to talk. Everyone's freaking out. What did you do? I didn't respond. Because this wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't revenge. This was release. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't slamming doors. I wasn't posting cryptic status updates or calling her names. I was just leaving. But before I disappeared, they needed to see what happened when the one they overlooked took his hands off the wheel. Every decision I had quietly upheld. Every bill I had quietly paid. Every corner of this wedding they thought had assembled itself. It had been me. And now, it was unraveling in real time. Vivian's final message came 10 minutes later. Just one line. You're really doing this? I stared at it for a moment. Then I powered off my phone. No, Viv. You did this. I just stopped pretending it was fine. I leaned back in my chair, the quiet pressing in around me like a new kind of peace. For the first time in months, I didn't feel stretched thin or overlooked. I felt solid, present, like someone who finally realized his value had nothing to do with what he could provide and everything to do with what he chose to allow. They wanted a wedding funded by silence? Let them build it from scratch. The vineyard glowed golden under the late afternoon sun, its manicured rows of grapevines catching the light like polished silver. Wind rustled through the branches, soft and deceptive. Everything about the place whispered elegance, exclusivity, the perfect backdrop for a curated life. The perfect setting for a performance. Their performance. Clarice's rehearsal dinner had been planned down to the last garnish. Vineyard 42, 45 minutes outside the city. Custom menus, lantern-lit terraces, valet-only parking. My name wasn't on the guest list, of course. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near it. But I was the reason they had lights strung through the trellises, the reason the speaker system hummed with their pre-approved jazz playlist. My fingerprints were all over this event, even if they'd scrubbed my name from the program. I arrived just before the toast. I parked down the road and walked the rest of the way. I wasn't dressed like a saboteur. No trench coat. No hidden smirk. Just a tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, polished black shoes. The kind of outfit that says, you may have written me out of the story, but I still know how to show up. The valet glanced at me but didn't stop me. I walked past him and through the open gate like I belonged, because I did, whether they liked it or not. Inside, the guests were milling around the main patio, glasses in hand, conversations rising and falling like choreographed waves. Clarice stood near the archway with Graham, all white teeth and photo-ready posture. Vivian was by the drink station, laughing too loudly, her back turned. I didn't announce myself. I simply walked to the AV table, one I had personally arranged to be brought in last week, and plugged in the flash drive from my pocket. It took all of 10 seconds. The venue staff didn't question me. I looked like I knew what I was doing. Because I did. The room dimmed slightly as the speakers gave a soft chime. Conversations quieted, guests turning automatically toward the source of the interruption. I stepped forward with the mic in one hand, the remote in the other. I could see Vivian now, her expression shifting from confusion to panic as she realized who I was. "I'm not here to make a scene," I said calmly, my voice steady, practiced. "But I do think it's important that when people toast to love and family, they understand who's actually been pouring the wine behind the curtain." Then I pressed play. Vivian's voice came first. Clear. Sharp. Laughing. "He's not coming." I made sure. "He's just background." Gasps rippled through the patio. A few heads turned toward her. Her face went white, then red. Clarice's voice followed, cutting through the silence like a shard of glass. "At least he's finally useful for something." Then Graham's smug confirmation. "He's paying for it. May as well milk it." Dead silence. Every guest stood frozen, expressions ranging from shocked to awkwardly curious. One woman, an aunt, maybe, sipped her wine like she suddenly regretted attending. Another man whispered to his wife and started backing away, like scandal was contagious. Vivian moved toward me, but I held up a hand. Not in anger, just control. I wasn't finished. "Let's be clear," I said. "This isn't about bitterness. It's about truth. About the cost of silence. You all toast love, loyalty, unity, but the person who paid for your fairy tale? You erased him. Because he didn't match the aesthetic." Clarice's mouth opened, but no words came out. Graham stood frozen, blinking like someone unplugged his neural network. Vivian looked like she wanted to scream, but didn't know which direction to face. I turned to them, one by one. Then, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a folder. Inside, receipts, emails, screenshots, payment confirmations. Each one carefully labeled. Each one a line of proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the manipulation. I walked over and placed it in front of Clarice on the welcome table, beside the guest book she hadn't asked me to sign. Vivian lunged for it. I stepped aside. Let her grab at air. "This folder," I said, "isn't revenge. It's clarity. For you. For Graham. For anyone who thought I was just the guy holding the camera." And then, like a magician with a final flourish, I turned to Graham. "You still want to marry into this?" He looked at me, at Vivian, then down at the folder. Before he could respond, a new voice rang out from the back. "I can verify everything. Kristen, my former colleague, digital forensic analyst." Unassuming in a soft blouse and flats, she stepped forward with a laptop and a printed badge from her firm. "These files? All verified. No tampering. Direct from WhatsApp backups linked to Vivian's old phone." Graham's face cracked, like someone had poured acid over a polished mirror. "I'm calling it off," he muttered, voice hollow. I need to think." Clarice screamed, a sound not of pain, but fury. A caged animal suddenly aware of its boundaries. The vineyard descended into chaos. I didn't wait for the aftershocks. I walked out, slow and steady, as the sound of broken champagne flutes and shattered illusions followed me into the cooling evening. No applause. No thanks. But finally silence. The right kind. It was strange how quiet it got after the bomb went off. Not literally, of course. Clarice had screamed like someone had electrocuted her, and there was the clatter of silverware hitting stone and the frantic shuffle of expensive heels on gravel. But after that, after the crowd thinned, after Graham walked away without a backward glance, after the first whispered, "Oh my God," gave way to stunned silence, it was just me, standing in the wreckage of the illusion they built. And I wasn't done yet. I walked back toward the table and picked up the folder Vivian had tried to snatch from my hand like it was a live grenade. I held it up, calm as ever. This wasn't for drama. This was documentation. "Everything in here," I said, voice low but clear, "is real. Every deposit. Every canceled charge. Every email thread that ended with 'Thanks again, man.' Every invoice where my name was the only one that mattered." Line by line. I opened the folder. Pulled out the first page. $850, custom florals deposit. Paid by me. When Clarice's dad's card accidentally declined. Next page. $7, 500, venue upgrade. Paid by me. When Graham's crypto tanked. Next, truck loan to Clarice for 3 weeks. Returned with a parking ticket and a melted airhead stuck to the seat. I kept going. Page after page. Printed proof of what they'd all swept under their satin rugs. I didn't do this for praise, I said, locking eyes with Vivian. I did it because I thought I was part of something. I thought helping meant something. That love, in its quiet form, was still love. But what I was doing was funding my own erasure. Clarice tried to interrupt, her voice strained. This is humiliating. No, I cut in. Humiliation is public. This is exposure. And exposure only hurts when you're hiding something. I turned to Graham. His back was to Clarice now. Hands in his pockets, jaw tight. This man, I said, motioning toward him, was about to walk into a family he didn't know he was subsidizing. He deserved the truth. Just like I did. Then Kristen stepped forward again, ever the professional, holding up her tablet with the WhatsApp exports displayed. These messages came directly from Vivian's backup sync, verified through cloud timestamps. No edits. No imports. If anyone wants a copy, I've already emailed it to the family account tied to the wedding folder. You could hear the ripple go through the guests. Some were already stepping away, pretending they had urgent matters to attend to, like the air had suddenly become toxic. Others watched with a kind of fascinated pity, like they couldn't look away but were grateful it wasn't them. Vivian's voice finally came out, thin and trembling. You could have come to me. Talk to me. This was a performance. No, Viv, I said, and for the first time, her name tasted unfamiliar. This was a reckoning. She looked like she wanted to cry, and maybe she did. But tears don't mean much when they're a reaction to consequence, not remorse. And I had no more space for theater. I took the final page from the folder, one I hadn't shown yet. It was a screenshot. Just one. Vivian, he always does. I held it up, let her look at it, let it hang in the air. That's the version of me you all built your little empire on. The he always does guy? The fallback. The background. The wallet in the room. I placed it gently on the table and stepped back. Graham took a slow breath, turned to Clarice. I don't want this, he said, his voice steady. I don't want any of this. Clarice reached for him. He shook his head and stepped out of her grasp. Then, without another word, he walked away. Down the path. Out the gate. Gone. Clarice shrieked. Anger, disbelief, collapse. Her mother rushed to her. A cousin tried to fan her face. But I wasn't looking anymore. I was walking. Past the chairs I had helped arrange weeks ago. Past the bandstand I had priced out myself. Past the custom signage that still had my handwriting on it. I walked to my car with nothing but my breath, my peace, and the faint hum of a sunset starting to pull down the sky behind me. As I opened the door, I caught my reflection in the glass. Still me. Still standing. Still here. But not the same. Not invisible. Not erased. This time, they would remember every line. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even think about it. There was nothing there for me anymore. Just reminders. Furniture we chose together. The scent of her shampoo lingering in the hallway. A joint checking account that felt more like a leash than a connection. I took a left off the main road and just drove. Windows down, phone off, no destination. Just the soft hum of the engine and the slow, clean unraveling of everything I used to be. By dawn, I had crossed 2 county lines. At a gas station near a fishing supply store, I saw a flyer taped to the window. Lakeside cabin for rent, month to month. A phone number in thick black marker, half smudged by rain. I stared at it for a minute. Then I typed the number into a burner phone I'd bought an hour earlier at a 24-hour strip mall. When the man answered, gravelly voice, no small talk, I simply said, "Is it still available?" 2 hours later, I had a key. No lease. No paperwork. Just a $700 cash deposit and a nod. The cabin sat near the northern rim of Lake Camden. No neighbors in shouting distance. No Wi-Fi. 1 bar of cell reception if you stood near the shed and tilted your head like a sunflower. Perfect. The walls were paneled in faded pine, and the place smelled like old newspapers and cedar. There was no TV, no microwave, no modernity except a rusted-out stovetop and a cracked Keurig. And still, when I turned the key and stepped inside, it felt like the safest place I'd been in years. I dropped my bags on the floor and stood there for a long time, listening to nothing. The first 3 days passed in silence. I didn't speak. Not to anyone. Not even to myself. I swept the porch. Watched birds land on the rail. Chopped wood. Slept deeply for the first time in a year. No dreams. No alarms. Just the sound of the wind moving through trees that didn't know my name. On day 4, I drove to the nearest town, a place with one main street, 2 diners, and a library that doubled as a bakery on Wednesdays. There was a flyer board near the post office. One note caught my eye. Woodcraft course. Beginner's welcome. Weeknights, 6 p.m. Learn how to build what lasts. That line stuck with me. I signed up that afternoon. The instructor's name was Don. He was in his late 60s, spoke with a drawl, and never used more words than necessary. The class was small, just 5 of us. A retired nurse, a father and daughter duo, a young guy recovering from a breakup, and me. None of them asked what brought me here. Maybe they could sense that I was carrying something too heavy to unpack in small talk. We started simple: sanding, measuring, cutting. The first thing I made was a chair. It creaked when I sat in it, but it held. There was something comforting in building something with your hands, something solid, something that served a purpose without being used up. After class, I'd drive back to the cabin and sit on the porch with a cup of black coffee and nothing but the stars for company. I deleted old emails, removed myself from group threads, shut down shared calendars, closed the joint bank account. I left no explanation, no breadcrumbs, just silence. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing to no longer answer to people who only remembered my worth when their plans were on the line. Choosing to become someone I respected again. Someone who didn't wait to be invited. Someone who left the table when the menu stopped serving dignity. Vivian didn't know where I was. Neither did Clarice. Or Graham. Or anyone else who once used my number like a butler's bell. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the echo of the collapse they never thought possible. I didn't care what stories they told. Whether I was painted as dramatic or cruel or unstable. The truth was carved into every receipt, every message, every silent favor I gave them when they didn't bother to ask. One night, as I was oiling the arms of the chair I'd built, I thought about the way Vivian used to smile at me when we were alone. Before the family dinners. Before the politics of image and perception swallowed her whole. I wondered if that woman ever really saw me, or just saw what I offered. It didn't matter now. The chair creaked again when I leaned back, but it didn't break. And neither would I. I didn't vanish because I was weak. I vanished because I finally understood what it meant to protect your peace. You don't owe an explanation to people who only show up when you're paying. You don't have to keep proving yourself to a room that keeps changing the locks. Some goodbyes are loud. Mine was made of pine and quiet, and it would outlast all of them. The first message came 3 weeks later. I saw it flash across my burner phone screen while I was sanding down the edge of a maple nightstand. The vibration startled me more than the content. Please just talk to us. No name. But I knew it was Vivian. She still hadn't figured out I'd changed my number. Somehow, through some old device or backup, her message managed to snake its way into my new space. I stared at it for a while, not out of sentiment, but curiosity. Like spotting the first crack in a dam you once built by hand. More messages followed over the next few days. You're still part of the family. You went too far. We can fix this. No apology. Just appeals. Revisions to a story they didn't want to end the way it had. But the thing is, they didn't miss me. They missed my utility. My card. My calm. My silence. Their version of me had always been more convenient than the real one. Docile, predictable, reliable. The man who said yes even when he should have walked away. I changed the number again. Then I logged into our shared accounts, what remained of them. I closed everything. Savings. Checking. The wedding registry Graham had helpfully encouraged Clarice to monetize. I pulled my name from every utility, every insurance policy, every auto payment still tied to the house. I unlinked the emergency contacts. Removed Vivian from my health records. Took her father off the deed I'd once helped him refinance. That one, I'll admit, was satisfying. He had tried to sell the property 6 months ago. Told me he had a buyer lined up, that he just needed a co-signer to release the equity. I didn't sign. Instead, I locked the deed, changed the access permissions, and created a paper trail that led straight back to me. When he finally found a new buyer, it took all of one call to the title office for the deal to fall apart. No yelling, no confrontation, just a closed door. Let them sit in the silence they curated. Let them learn how loud absence can be. Kristen texted once, just once. I hope it gave you closure. I replied with 2 words. It did. No need for more. She hadn't done it for thanks. She did it because some people still value truth over optics. Because when someone finally opens the blinds in a room full of lies, the light is supposed to sting. One morning, I stepped outside with coffee in hand and found a single white envelope in my cabin's mailbox. No return address. Handwritten. I didn't recognize the penmanship, but the moment I slid the card out, I knew. Vivian. The message inside was short. No apologies. No ownership. Just a string of familiar lines, carefully threaded together. I didn't know it had gone that far. I never meant to hurt you. We all lost control. You're still my husband. I read it once. Then I lit the fireplace and fed it into the flames, watching the paper curl and blacken like it had finally been honest. I hadn't been her husband in a long time. Not the moment she chose public loyalty over private honesty. Not the moment she let her sister insult me with a smile and called it old-fashioned. Not the moment she typed, "He's not invited," and thought that wouldn't burn. My name meant something again now, but not because of who I belonged to. Because I stopped allowing it to be handled like currency. I began to write again. Not emails or spreadsheets or dinner RSVP lists, but real writing. Pages of thoughts, of plans. Notes about how I'd rebuild, not out of spite, but out of clarity. I sketched furniture designs. Drafted small business plans. A woodworking blog. A mobile bench and repair service for cabins in the area. Nothing grand, just honest work. Tangible. Solid. In the quiet, I started hearing myself again. No background noise. No second guessing. No need to smile when I didn't feel it. The silence wasn't punishment. It was peace. Sometimes, I sat by the lake and remembered who I used to be, the man who thought loyalty alone was enough to earn love. The man who showed up with tools and open hands, thinking contribution equaled connection. He wasn't weak. He just hadn't been taught how to leave when staying started to cost too much. Now I knew better. Now I was better. Vivian and her family weren't villains. They were just practiced in using people who didn't set boundaries. And I was done volunteering for that. Love without respect is just performance. And I had finally stepped off their stage. The silence wasn't empty. It was earned. I drove by the venue one last time, not because I had unfinished business there, but because closure sometimes wears the face of a final glance. The gates were locked. The lot was empty. A gentle wind rustled through the hedges where, months ago, Clarice had insisted on installing a private photo booth, so everyone would tag the event on Instagram. The booth was gone now. So were the imported centerpieces, the dance floor, the live jazz trio they'd pretended to splurge on, not realizing I had already covered the difference in silence. There was no wedding. Not anymore. The gravel crunching beneath my tires felt like applause, soft, slow, deliberate. Not the kind people give in celebration, but the kind reserved for acknowledgement. A recognition of endings. I stepped out of the car, envelope in hand. Cream-colored, thick stock, embossed return address, leftover from their original batch of wedding invites. I didn't bring it to be sentimental. It wasn't a gesture. It was a bill. Inside was a printed invoice, breakdown of every expense I had covered. No angry annotations. No sarcastic jabs. Just facts. Numbers. Reality. And on top of it all, a yellow sticky note with a simple message. Thanks for nothing. I slipped it into the venue's rusted mailbox and shut the lid. Firm. Final. Then I got back into the car, rolled down the window, and let the silence fold over me like a blanket. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't vengeance. It wasn't some Hollywood moment where the wronged man turns anti-hero and smiles smugly in the rearview mirror. It was just done. A door closed, without the need for a slam. Back at the cabin, life had begun to settle into a rhythm that didn't involve walking on eggshells or editing myself in conversation. I woke up with purpose, not pressure. I ate when I was hungry, not when the family calendar said it was appropriate. I built things. Fixed things. Things that didn't talk back or ask what I was wearing or tell me I wasn't wedding aesthetic. A few days after dropping the invoice, I got a call from a blocked number. I didn't answer. It went a voicemail. Vivian's voice came through, quiet, hesitant, as if she was talking to a ghost she wasn't sure she wanted to see. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I just thought you should know. I didn't realize what I'd lost until it was gone. I deleted the message. I didn't need her to realize anything. That wasn't the point. She had spent years misunderstanding the currency of love, mistaking comfort for compliance, presence for permission. Her apology now wasn't about healing. It was about discomfort. The itch that comes when someone you once dismissed decides not to return. And I wasn't returning. A few weeks later, I had a new mailbox installed at the cabin. The old one had rusted through, and it felt like time. The installer was a quiet guy named Andy. drove a flatbed, listened to blues, didn't ask many questions. When he finished bolting it in, he asked, "You want a nameplate on it?" I thought about that for a second. My old life? It was plastered with titles. Husband, provider, brother-in-law, son-in-law, all labels tied to other people's expectations. So I shook my head. No name. Andy raised an eyebrow. "You want anything on it?" I pulled a slip of brass from my back pocket, something I'd etched myself the week before in Don's woodshop. I handed it over. He read it, let out a short, quiet laugh, and nodded. "Brutal," he said, "but honest." He screwed the plate in beneath the keyhole. 6 words. "This box does not accept apologies." I stood there for a while after he left, staring at the smooth brass catching the late sun. It wasn't meant to be poetic. It was just true. People love closure when they control it. They love apologies when they're the ones offering them late, hoping the clock resets. But life doesn't work that way. Some doors lock behind you not because someone's angry, but because they finally learned how to protect what's inside. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was finished. They'd spent so long shaping me into someone useful, presentable, palatable. And I had played the part because I thought loyalty meant endurance. But it doesn't. Loyalty without reciprocity is just self-erasure. And I wasn't in the business of disappearing anymore. The wedding didn't happen. The family fractured. The story ended not with fireworks, but with footnotes. And me? I carved a new name into my own story. One built not on how much I could give, but on what I chose to keep. And peace? Peace sounds a lot like a mailbox that doesn't echo anymore.